The way law school works is that you read cases and then you, like I said, tease out the rule or the law. Law school curves are much harder because if you think about it, law schools take the best of the best. Professors will call on random students just to answer questions or to analyze a case. Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Brittany, and if you've been following me, you know that we are in the Life as a Lawyer series. I have several videos where I talked about if you should become a lawyer, if you should go to law school, and my experience going to law school and my advice on becoming a lawyer. I also did a video about how to get into law school with my friend Susan. You can watch that video if you click up here, and you can watch my video if you should become a lawyer if you click up here as well. In today's video, we're going to be talking all about law school because I know a lot of you guys are actually in law school or about to go into law school, and you're just wondering what's law school like, how is it best to study in law school, how to succeed in law school. For me, I went to Chapman University, which is a law school in Orange, California. Maybe some of you have heard of it, some of you haven't. It's probably a second tier or lower tiered school. It's not the best, but it's what I got into and it's where I wanted to be. I wanted to be in Southern California, so it was the best opportunity for me. I graduated from law school in 2014, so it's been a little bit of time since I was in law school, and to be honest, I think I blocked a lot of the memories of law school from my mind because it was just not the most pleasant experience, but I'll try to remember and dig up those old memories so that I can share with you guys all about my experiences in law school. So first, just to talk about my experience in law school, as I sort of already alluded to, it wasn't quite the most positive experience. I would have to say it was the 3 hardest years of my life. It was difficult. I never studied that much in my life, and it was pretty miserable at times. I contemplated quitting many times after studying and going through exams and going through classes. Just going through law school was just difficult. I'm sure a lot of you can relate if you're in law school, especially like I said in my first video, if you're not passionate about the law or becoming a lawyer, there are many times during law school where you're going to question, is this worth it? Is this worth the stress? Is this worth having to be called on randomly by a professor? Is this worth going through all this pain? When approaching law school, it was a little different for me because I basically went to a commuter school, meaning most people didn't really live on campus. They commuted, they lived in the area, so they sort of already had their own friends like me. I wasn't really going to law school to make friends. I was just going to law school because I had to in order to become a lawyer. So I sort of went in with the thought, I'm just gonna go to class and I'm gonna leave and study. And so I think maybe that is also why I had more of a negative experience, because I didn't try as hard. I didn't try as hard to make friends. I didn't join many clubs or be that involved. I think some people who really enjoyed law school probably were more involved, but I would say most people are similar to me where just law school was miserable for them. So the way law school is broken out, it's broken out into 3 years. You have your 1L year, your 2L year, and your 3L year. Your 1L year, at least at Chapman, is where all the classes are predetermined for you. You are in different tracks, so you have the same classes with the same people throughout the entire year, so you really get to know those people. And that's where you can make friends. Generally, the person you sit next to is probably the person you're going to talk to the most. You can kind of see what kind of people you have in your class. There are people that are gunners. They seem really smart. They speak up a lot in class. They're not always the smartest though, and they're not always the ones that get the highest grades, because just because they talk a lot doesn't mean that they do well on exams, and I'll go all over exams in a little bit. But you also have the quieter people like myself who probably don't talk as much, and you just have a wide variety of people in your classes that you will get to know and see throughout your career. Then in your 2L year, you can choose more of your own classes. There's still a mix of required classes and your own electives. For me, I actually didn't choose a specialty, and you don't have to choose a specialty when you go into law school. You can just study to get your Juris Doctorate and you can graduate that way. There are people who want to specialize in tax law. Some people might be getting their LLM if they're an international student, but you don't have to actually specialize, at least not at Chapman. For me, I didn't even know what type of law I wanted to do, so I don't even think I would know what I was going to specialize in until I graduated. So I kind of like that you could just take your normal classes and they sort of build it out for you to understand what will help you. Really, law school, in my opinion, is preparing you for the bar exam, because I would say a lot of what you learn in law school isn't necessarily things that you're going to use on the job. I know a lot of people talk about that, but it's true. You study contracts, you study property. These are not really things that you're going to go into unless you become a real estate lawyer, or maybe you are in criminal law and you will not deal at all with contracts, or vice versa. I don't ever deal with criminal law. People think of lawyers as maybe those that know about criminal law or the police. I don't really know much about that because I may have learned about it in 1 or 2 classes, but by the time you graduate and start practicing, you don't remember those things anymore. And if you don't use it, you're gonna lose it. So I would say that law school is really preparing you for the bar exam, which is the most important, because if you can't pass the bar, then you can't become a lawyer. There are certain classes that are important for you to take. For me, since I was taking the California bar exam, there are California specific bar classes in order to prepare you for those parts of the bar exam. Also, when you reach your 3L year, it's basically preparing you more and more for the bar, so you take bar-specific classes or some electives that are special to what you're interested in. For me, since I wasn't really interested in much, I just kind of took whatever fit into my schedule or sounded interesting. Although, to be honest, I don't think any law school classes are really that interesting. Sometimes you also just pick classes because it's a good professor, you hear that it's easy. So by the time my 3L year hit, it was basically just focusing a lot on the bar exam and how I can prepare the most for that test. One thing that I hated the most about law school is the Socratic Method. If you've seen Legally Blonde, you know that professors will call on random students just to answer questions or to analyze a case. And for someone like me who is shy and I don't like being called on, I hate participation. It was like my worst fear. Every day going into class, you don't know if you're going to get called on for a certain case, and you have to basically speak in front of the entire class. Sometimes they make you stand up and brief a case, which I'll go over in a second, but it's just very nerve-wracking because you don't know if it's going to be you or if it's going to be you that has to talk, and you might be wrong, you might get information wrong. And I think the point of the Socratic Method is to be dialoguing with the professor back and forth to sort of tease out the role of the case, which in my opinion is just a really archaic way of studying, because I don't think it really helps much, and if anything it just embarrasses those of us who don't know the answer or don't like getting called on. So that's just one thing. It's like this internal fear that I had every single day going into class was whether or not I was going to get called on, and that's just not a good feeling. And I think that's part of the reason why I hated law school so much, because it was just so stressful waiting for each class to end. The next main part about law school is cases. So I don't have any of my law school books here with me, but this is what they look like, and basically each law book is a bunch of cases. It's different than a normal textbook where you have like text and you have diagrams and you have the things that teach you about what you think the law is. The way law school works is that you read cases and then you, like I said, tease out the rule or the law from those cases. These are basically famous cases that maybe it's the Supreme Court or Superior Court, they decided, or these landmark cases where the judges decided on a rule of law that you'll actually be using in real life. Depending on what it is. So for example, contracts. There are cases dating back to the 1800s where certain things were decided, and that's the foundation for what we use nowadays. And usually for your reading homework or your reading assignments, you're basically reading like 5 cases from each class, and you have to do these case briefs, which are basically like outlines of each case, and during class that's where you talk about the outlines. Each school or each professor might have their own special method, but usually it's the IRAC method, IRAC, issue, rule, analysis, conclusion. So for me, whenever I would read a case, I would just lay it out that way. Excuse the honking. I would just have facts in the beginning where you just talk about the facts of the case. You have the issue, which is what is the issue that we're solving and what issue of law are we solving in this case. You have the rule, so what rule of law are you gaining from this case, the analysis of how the court got to that rule, and then the conclusion. It sounds really abstract if you're not in law school, and it took some time to get used to it, but I would say just keep at it. Use casebriefs.com. A lot of people hate on that, but it's helpful to see. Sometimes the rule is not always apparent to you, or there's just a lot of text to get through and you don't really understand what's important and what's not. Also, buy special books that help you. There are special readers. I think the most important thing is to talk to other 2L or 3L students that had the same professor as you. We had fellows that helped, so they were specially chosen by the professor to have office hours and help us through these cases. They might tell you, hey, this professor, they take a lot of their exam questions or a lot of their lecture notes from this certain summary book or from this other helpful study guide. So really listen to them, get notes from other students, get their outlines. A lot of people will ask for your outlines, which is basically what you create at the end of the course, where you have all of your rule statements, which are like the rules. You know, you have certain special cases, you have the analysis that you need, and these things will help you either on the bar exam or when you take the exam. So just get a lot of resources from other students that can help you on your exams. What you do during the week to study is just reading. That's why I said in my previous videos, you need to be able to read a lot. You're gonna be reading like I don't even remember how many pages a week or how many pages a day to get through all these cases that you're preparing for the next day or the next 2 days for your next class for when you might get called on to case brief. And then at the end, you're gonna take exam. There's usually 2 exams. They basically take up your entire grade. Sometimes you have participation, which, like I said before, if you get called on, you kind of, if you don't know the answer, or sometimes if you haven't read, you'll get docked, or if you don't participate enough, you don't raise your hand and try to actively answer questions, then your participation grade will hurt. But exams are the most important because they make up basically 50% of your grade, and they are not quite like other exams. Just like everything else in law school, which I feel like is very archaic, law school exams are different. They're basically these fact patterns, which is like a scenario. For example, you know, Brittany was walking down the street, she got hit by a car, someone threw a brick from a window, she got injured, you know, who's at fault or something like that. You get these little paragraph fact patterns you have to read, and you have to analyze them, and you also use the IRAC structure. So you're trying to spot issues. One fact pattern might have 5 to 10 issues, and you need to spot each one, each line, and then in that issue you should recall like a case that you read. Okay, this is similar to that one case where that one rule was decided, and you have to basically do an analysis. So you talk about the issue that you're going to be talking about, you write the rule, so basically this is where memorization comes in. That's why I use a lot of note cards basically to write down rules, to memorize them, so that you can literally regurgitate them onto the exam, and then you analyze. How do the facts of this fact pattern apply to the analysis and the rule, and then what is your conclusion in the end? So it's very formulaic. It's not like a typical essay where you need a introduction paragraph and a conclusion paragraph. You're basically following this structure, and it doesn't actually look like an essay with neat paragraphs. Obviously you need good grammar, but professors are grading exams really quickly. They basically have a check mark. Did this student catch this issue? Did they analyze this way? Did they get the rule statement correct? And you get points for each one, and then obviously they just total the points at the end. Another major thing to think about for law school is that they grade on a curve. And I'm sure you've heard about this in college as well, but law school curves are much harder because if you think about it, law schools take the best of the best. Everyone is smart, everyone is probably around the same intelligence level as you are, and you can't all get good grades. It has to be on a bell curve. So there's going to be some people that aren't going to get good grades, and there's going to be some people that are on the top, and then the rest fall somewhere in the middle. And professors have to grade on a curve. So if they have too many people clumped in one area, they're going to take some of those people and put them further down, and they're not going to get as good of a grade. So if you're someone who's more average like me, you're probably not going to do as well because you're going to fall within that one bell curve clump, and if you spotted one less issue, you might get pushed down. And usually grades work in a 4.0 scale, so when you get your grade, it's not going to say like A, B, or B minus, it's going to say like 2.7 or 3.7, and then you have to sort of figure out what the highest grade is and then where you are in relation to that grade. Exams are not only difficult, and they're not only something that you've probably never done in your life before, but they're also graded on a really tough curve, and so it's hard to get good grades, and that's just how it is. There's always going to be someone on the bottom and someone on the top, and it may not be you. It's something that you may not be used to if you get a lot of good grades. But to be honest, other than maybe your first internship or your first job within law school, most people don't look at your GPA after you graduate. And like I said, the most important thing is passing the bar exam, which I'll do a whole video about, so I would focus more on that. If you have multiple choice questions, which in my opinion are like the worst because I hate multiple choice and I'm not good at them at all, because at least for essays you can kind of like massage your answer and figure out which way you're going, but for multiple choice is always a right or wrong answer, and generally for law school exams at least, if you have like 4 of them, you can pretty much eliminate 1 or 2, and then you're left with 2 that both sound right, and you have to decide which one is the correct one. So basically, doing a lot of examples, you will start noticing patterns with certain questions, and if you do a lot of them, you'll know which answer is the correct one. A lot of them are like either mini fact patterns or they're asking about certain cases. Another thing that I forgot to mention is that you need to memorize case names, because you're going to use those in your analysis or in your rule statements. You might say in such and such versus such and such, and these are like special cases. These are famous cases that you need to memorize and you need to know and regurgitate onto the test, which you never use in real life, but for law school, you need to know them. And for me, I basically studied Monday through Friday every day. I didn't go out. I would come home right after school and basically read or study and brief my cases and prepare for the next day. During each day, in between classes, I would prepare for the class right before that and sort of review my notes so that if I got called on, I would know what to talk about. And then during the weekends, I would just explore, I would go to church, I would hang out with friends, and I would just try to relax. Of course, not everyone had this type of schedule, and for me it worked. Of course, like I said, I didn't get the best grade, so maybe if I had studied 7 days a week it would have been better, but I don't think I would have survived that. So I needed the weekend to just sort of relax and hang out with friends. When it came to studying for exams, I would basically sit down and write out my rule statements, memorize them on the cards, and also practice typing them out, because typing them out is the best practice you can get for the actual exam, because all exams are on computers. And practice going through fact patterns, going through my old notes. I find that when I transfer notes from my classes into my outline, it helps me because I'm retyping and I'm relearning and synthesizing the information. And then you have basically a study guide that you can go through that's not like 50 pages long and is maybe only 20 pages long. So as you already know, law school is not easy, and I hope you guys found this video informative. All of my advice sort of boils down to understanding what you'll be expected to do in law school, and understanding that it's nothing like the LSAT, it's nothing like college, it's nothing like you've ever done before, and it takes a certain type of brain and a lot of practice to understand how to brief cases. I really wanted to share information about what my law school experience was like, and to be honest, it's a lot of just figuring out along the way and trying to ask people and trying to get help where you can, but to realize that don't put too much pressure on yourself, because it's really hard to fail out of law school unless you really don't try at all or you just are totally missing the point. So if you just try your best, you're not going to get a 4.0, you're not going to get the best grades all the time, but in the end it doesn't really matter, because it all boils down to if you pass a bar exam and if you can even find a job. If you have any questions, go ahead and comment below. If you have any other suggestions for videos in the future or things that you want to know about, let me know as well. Don't forget to like this video, give it a thumbs up, and subscribe to my channel for more videos about being a lawyer. The next video is going to be all about how to study for the bar exam, which is something that I think a lot of people are stressed about and worried about, especially with the bar exam coming up. So hopefully I'll be able to bestow my knowledge upon you guys. So I'll see you in my next video. Bye.